Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're exploring two really fundamental ways to handle file sharing. We're talking cloud-based Azure File Storage versus, the traditional on-premises file shares. Our mission here is to pull out the key nuggets, the really important bits from our sources, so you can grasp the differences, the strengths, and, well, where you'd actually use them. It's kind of fascinating, actually. Both let users and apps share files, obviously. But our sources show they do it very differently. And interestingly, while Azure's scale is huge, the choice often comes down to control, maybe more than you'd think, even now. Understanding this stuff is pretty crucial if you're making decisions about data management.
Absolutely. That control aspect is often underestimated. So let's define the players properly. First up, Azure File Storage. This is a fully managed service in Microsoft Azure. Think of it like your standard file share, but Microsoft handles everything behind the scenes. It uses standard protocols, SMB, NFS.
Okay, so familiar protocols.
Exactly. And it's built for scale, security, and you don't touch any physical servers.
Right, so that's the cloud picture. To really get it, though, we need the comparison point. On-prem file shares. These are probably what many people think of first, right? Shares hosted on like local servers or maybe NAS devices in your own data center or office. Same protocols again, SMB or NFS. But the big difference is you own, manage, and maintain all the hardware yourself. All that hands-on work.
Yeah, the hands-on part is key. But let's tackle the sort of the why. Why Azure Files when we had on-prem? On-prem was, for a long time, the only way. It met the basic need for shared access, but it had drawbacks. Hardware costs, scaling was manual and often painful, maintenance, lots of potential headaches, downtime too. Azure File Storage came along to fix those specific issues. Our sources really emphasize this. It's fully managed, pay-as-you-go, scaled massively up to 100 T3 we're talking, and offers, get this, 99.99% durability.
Wow, okay. 100 terabytes.
Yeah.
And that 99.99% durability, that must be a huge weight off someone's shoulders compared to managing backups on-prem, right? So the cloud solution makes management simpler. Things like Azure File Sync, Azure AD integration for security.
Definitely simplifies things. But on-prem still has its place. Like you mentioned, that need for localized control is real. Also, super low latency access sometimes, and importantly, compatibility with certain maybe older legacy applications. It's about having that direct physical grasp on your data and infrastructure.
Makes sense. So it's a trade-off.
It is. Feature-wise, Azure gives you options. Standard tier using HDDs, premium using SSDs for better performance, integrates with Azure AD for access, Azure Backup for protection. You can even issue temporary secure access keys, shared access signatures, SaaS keys, and the real game changer for many is Azure File Sync. That lets you connect your on-prem servers to Azure Files for hybrid setups.
Right, the hybrid angle is interesting, whereas with
Yeah.
on-prem, you've got total hardware control, you pick the disks, everything, and it integrates with your local Active Directory. But yeah, you're on the hook for backups, updates, patching, all that maintenance.
Exactly. Azure's built-in tools just handle a lot of that heavy lifting, especially around things like disaster recovery and redundancy.
So practical uses, when would you pick Azure Files?
Well, it shines in cloud-native setups. Shared files for teams spread out geographically, maybe.
Mhm.
Storing application data for VMs running in Azure, especially if you need that SSD performance from the premium tier.
Oh, and storing files users upload to web apps. It handles that securely.
Okay, cloud-native makes sense.
Yeah.
But where does on-prem still win then? You mentioned legacy apps needing local, low-latency access. Things like big CAD files for engineering teams. That rings a bell. I remember working with a place where moving this one ancient piece of software was just not an option. It had to stay local. So sometimes it's pure necessity, not just preference for control.
That's a perfect example. Necessity often dictates the choice. But those hybrid scenarios using Azure File Sync are powerful. You keep the local access needed, but replicate data to Azure for, say, cloud backup or DR. Best of both, maybe.
Yeah, the hybrid approach seems really flexible. What about limitations, though? Any catches?
Sure. Azure File Standard Tier has performance limits naturally, and if you have tons of small file operations, costs could go up. You need to monitor that.
With Azure Cost Management, presumably. Right. For on-prem, the big limits are usually scalability hitting hardware ceilings and a lack of easy, built-in geo-redundancy. Protecting data across different physical regions is much simpler with Azure's design. Plus, the IT overhead, the expertise needed. Got it. So wrapping this up, it seems Azure File Storage and on-prem file shares aren't really enemies. They're more like different tools.
Yeah.
Azure gives you managed scale in the cloud. On-prem gives you that direct control, often for specific, maybe legacy reasons.
Precisely. There's no single best answer here. It boils down entirely to your workload, your performance needs, how much control you want or need. It's about picking the right tool for the specific job you have. And remembering things like Azure File Sync can blend them together effectively.
Right tool for the right job. So the final thought for you listening. Based on all this, how might you rethink how your own files, your data, are stored and managed? Could you make things more efficient, more secure, something to chew on?